Are you listening?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, from my screen, is OIE fuel from the fields, briquettes from agricultural waste, which is supposed to be presented by I, Muhammad Shamsuddin, and my partner Hannan. But unfortunately, due to network problems, she might not actually be available. From the topic of discussion, which is briquettes from agricultural waste, actually, we consider a lot of activities happening in our own immediate environment. There are issues that are coming up related to climate change, and we realize that there is need for us to provide a solution, which is climate action. But we realize just advocating for climate action isn't the only thing we need. So we decided to make it an activity in such a way that each and every individual from the community will actively participate. From our introduction, worldwide 2.4 billion people use wood, charcoal, other plant materials, usually biomass and coal as their primary source of cooking fuel, especially in developing countries like northwestern Africa. The burning of biomass accounts for up to 80% of household fuel use. Widespread burning of unprocessed biomass was well characterized has a well-characterized impact on health and environment. Indoor air pollution, among other things, causes pneumonia, which leads to early, due to exposure of smoke, which leads to early high rate of high mortality rate. It leads to high blood pressure, eye issues related to the eye, among other things. There is a figure which clearly explains how they use all this agricultural biomass for cooking, especially in African countries, which is in figure one, because women and young children are the most people that are affected. Deforestation also causes soil erosion, increasing vulnerability to flooding and causes lower crop yield from farms. Uh, Introduction continued. And on the screen, we will be able to realize that there is a diagram, a figure, which is indoor air pollution from cooking with biomass, which is associated with pneumonia. Usually in African countries, charcoal or agricultural biomass are used for cooking. So the process which the break-free plastic movement team in Nigeria developed is a process in which previously unused agricultural waste were converted to charcoal briquettes, because we realized that charcoal has been used for as a cooking fuel and also all liquefied petroleum gases or kerosene. And we realized that the negative impact of kerosene, liquefied petroleum gas, or charcoal, which is usually formed by cutting down trees, have more negative impact than the use of agricultural biomass, which already we know they have no use. And also, using charcoal briquettes is more easier because it does not require someone to purchase new stuff or change the way they cook. The background. Then let's take a look at how a charcoal is being formed so that we can compare with the briquettes and select which one is better and which one is easier to produce and the best to use. So taking a look at how charcoal is made, charcoal making is a traditional industry across the world. Charcoal is an energy dense fuel that can easily be transported from rural to urban areas. But production of charcoal or making charcoal needs about three conditions. The first one is carbon-rich material, usually or traditionally wood, because for you to get a quality charcoal, there is need to use to cut down trees. Secondly, there is a need for heat and anaerobic conditions, that is, it must be burnt without air present. And if we are to practice that, then we are diminishing life on land, which is the SDG goal number 15. And therefore, for us to act, we are sustainably managing forests, combating desertification, halting and reversing land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. Then background to be continued. Now let's compare the process of producing charcoal briquettes from agricultural waste and normal charcoal, since charcoal production is a traditional method. So taking a look at charcoal first, traditional charcoal is made by cutting down a tree, setting fire to the trunk and covering it with soil. The tree carbonizes, turns into charcoal over 1 to 3 weeks, as it is indicated 1 to 3 weeks.
Mohammed, I can't hear you anymore.
The environmental-free plastic movements uh, process, which is a technology which involves filling a metal can with agricultural waste, usually the fabricated carbonizer, which is the agricultural waste is the source of carbon. This waste is ignited and later sealed to create anaerobic conditions. After 2 hours, briquette charcoal is formed. So if we compare the two, this says after 2 hours. Because we can take maximum of 4 to 5 hours to produce charcoal briquettes. But taking a look at um, normal charcoal, we are about to use about 2 to 3 weeks or more. And also, the environmental impacts are worsened compared to that of the briquette charcoal. Then, the raw materials. Briquettes can be produced from any appropriate agricultural waste. The Break Free Plastic Movement Nigeria team encourages the use of biomass that has no other value, that is unsuitable for animal or human consumption or for composting. So the raw material from here, we are able to make sure that they have no other use. They are waste, and we usually burn such type of waste in the farms. So therefore, if that is the case, it is useful, and we have to convert it to something usable to the environment, and which is very, very good because it helps, or it is a climatic action. So apart from the agricultural waste, we actually need a grated cassava or some other starch. To make strong briquette, a small quantity of starch binder must be added to the charcoal powder. Grated cassava porridge is ideal, although any other starch can be used. Now, from these three images, we are able to see agricultural waste, the bagasse from the maize bagasse, the wheat that are being gotten from the farm, and the third one is maize cobs, which are all waste products that have no any other use. The only one that is used is usually the maize bagasse and the corn cobs, and while our women use it for cooking, it produces smoke, and which leads to pneumonia and other diseases. So therefore, it's better we use the agricultural waste. And the porridge we are saying here is the starch porridge, which is usually cassava porridge that can be used as the binder. As we move forward, we'll be able to see how the process is. Very easy, very simple, and sustainable. Then the equipment. The following equipment are needed for briquettes production. The first and one of the most important equipment is a carbonizer. This is a fabricated carbonizer from an oil drum. We will see that at the bottom of the carbonizer, there are holes in which we are going to use biomass as wick to ignite the agricultural waste for carbonization process. And at the top of the drum, we have an area whereby the smoke will be going out, and it is in such a way that when it's time for us to seal, we will be able to seal it, because I made mention earlier that for us to form charcoal briquette, three materials or three conditions are required. The first, we said agricultural waste or source of carbon, usually agricultural products or plants or trees. The second, there is need for heat, that is the essence of the holes for ignition, and anaerobic condition, that is the absence of oxygen. So for us to have total absence of oxygen, this top of the carbonizer have to be sealed. We can see the cover at image A, image B, the top, and then the wick. Then apart from the carbonizer, the next thing we need is the briquette press.
Mohammed, are you still there?
Yes, I wanted to wipe
Oh, great.
I wanted to wipe the colors. So here is the briquette press. As we can see, it is also fabricated. It has a hole at the bottom, and when we put the briquettes, we use other materials to make it to mold it in such a way that we'll be able to dry it in various sizes. So this is the briquette press. As we move further, we'll be able to see clearly how we can use the briquette press. The next is hammer. I'm sure we are all familiar with a hammer. There are three various types of hammer: A, B, and C. So the equipment needed, the major equipments are the three. The first one, the carbonizer; the second one, the briquette press; and the third one, a hammer. We use these equipments because we want to make sure that people in rural areas will be able to produce briquettes in an affordable way, because we have to use traditional methods to make it easier. Then other equipments required. First of all, we need a long straight object like a stick to create a central chimney in the carbonizer. It could be taller than the carbonizer and as wide as a fist in diameter. Then three bricks or flat stones about the same size, rice bags or other large bags to crush the charcoal powder in, a basin to mix the charcoal powder with the starch porridge, and then matches to set fire or to ignite the agricultural waste. And then the last but not the least, sand or mud or dirt to help create an airtight seal around the carbonizer, because for the material to be well carbonized, as I said, there is need for anaerobic condition, absence of oxygen. So we have to use the sand, mud, or dirt or clay to make sure that all the openings in the carbonizer are being sealed. Then making the briquettes. We all know the materials needed, as we see earlier, all the equipment, the raw materials. Now, the most important thing is we have our raw materials, we know the conditions, we have our equipment, then production is the next. And the process of briquettes production is as much as an art as a science. It requires experience to produce high quality briquettes and to get high yields of briquettes from carbonizer fabricated using an oil drum. The method must also be adapted slightly for different materials. While this guide provides approximate details, the time required at each stage is variable. There is no actual substitute for experience. Now, taking a look at the process, how briquettes are made. The first method is carbonization, followed by preparation of the feedstock, which involves crushing and the rest. Then the next is mixing with a binder. As I made mention earlier, our binder is cassava porridge. Then compacting slash briquetting. In this process, we mold it, either using the briquette press, and if we are in a factory, we can use an extruder. Then the next step is drying. With these 5 steps, briquette charcoals are being formed, and all this can be done within 3 to 5 hours, depending on the nature of materials you are using. Now, the first step, filling the carbonizer. As you can see, this decarbonizer is there. The long stick I made mention of earlier, which is going to form a chimney, is there, which is in figure 7. Place a large stick in the center of the carbonizer and pack the bagasse, stocks or other material around until the carbonizer is full. In this process, figure 7, the carbonizer is filled. Then when it's filled, we carefully remove the stick, which serves as a chimney, so that air will have a passageway. Then when the chimney is removed, the next thing is we have to tilt the drum in order to have some bagasse at the bottom. Those holes I showed earlier, because we are going to ignite the carbonizer from the bottom, and the fire will move from the bottom to the top. So in that case, we are taking a small amount of material and poke it in each of the holes in the bottom of the drum, leaving about 20 centimeters sticking out. This creates a wick, allowing it to easily ignite the material at the bottom of the drum. Then when this is done, we have to light the fire. But before doing that, we need 3 stones, just like blocks. As mentioned, as shown earlier, where our women use that pot for cooking, we have to use 3 stones or blocks so that the drum will stand still. Then when the drum stands okay, then we ignite from the bottom. Once the biomass is fully on fire, it will make a large billowing plume of white smoke, as shown in figure 10. Figure 9 is the process in which the drum is on the stones and the ignition. So when the carbonizer and the stones, so it will be easy, it will be easy to remove the stones while the raw material is burning to seal the carbonizer. Now when the fire starts, the plume and the billowing plume of white smoke continues. We give it some time. Then after about 10 minutes, the smoke starts to get a bit darker, thicker and yellower. As the drum gets hotter, volatile carbon gases begin to be formed. This can be ignited to make the fire burn more cleanly, giving off carbon dioxide, as shown in figure 11. Then light a match and throw it into the top of the drum via that opening. If it is too soon, the smoke will not ignite, but if the timing is right, volatile carbon gases are evaporating. The smoke will catch on fire and the fire will burn much more clearly. So when the fire is burning, you let the fire burn for about 10 minutes before sealing it. Now when it's about 10 minutes, immediately when the fire was ignited, we are sure that about 70% of the agricultural biomass has been carbonized. So we give it 10 more minutes to make sure that we have about 90 to 99% carbonized material. So when we give that carbonizer 10 minutes, the next thing is we seal the carbonizer. The carbonizer have a covering which is with a handle, so that it is a lid that when we seal the edges of the carbonizer and edges of the lid with sand, it will help us in sealing everywhere so that air cannot move in. So sealing the carbonizer. In this case, the carbonizer in figure 12 and 13 is sealed with the cover. So we have to use sand and or mud, as I made mention earlier, as shown in figure on the screen. The sealing the carbonizer, the agricultural waste will slowly carbonize inside the hot oil drum. After, it's not 23 hours, it's 2 to 3 hours. When you are sure that the carbonizer has cooled, you can remove the lid. Before removing the material, reciprocal water inside the carbonizer. This will reduce the amount of briquettes charcoal dust that is thrown up into the air. Now, charcoal. After 2 to 3 hours, the material inside the carbonizer should be fully carbonized, as shown in figure 14 and 15. This means the briquettes charcoal powder will be black throughout. As you can see here in figure 14 and 15, this is the carbonized material, and also the material is turned into a sack, as we can see here. So at this case, from here, we have to crush the material. we can use a grinding machine, we can use different various processes, but in this case, we usually sprinkle water on the bag and use the stick we used earlier as our chimney to crush the material. After crushing it, the next thing we are to do is preparing the binder. Just as I mentioned earlier, the binder is the cassava porridge we are going to use. Now, when the carbonized material is crushed and our cassava porridge is prepared, then we mix it. Binder, then at this stage, once you have a fine briquettes charcoal powder, after grinding, binder must be added to it. This holds the powder together and makes strong briquettes. A number of different binders can be used, as I made mention earlier. Where in this case, we are using the cassava starchy porridge, which is ideal. Then after that, we mix it with hot water to form a thick gummy porridge. That is preparing the cassava porridge. Mix the fine briquettes charcoal powder with this warm porridge in a basin. Mix it well so that all of the briquettes charcoal has some porridge on it. That is, it will form it will the charcoal powder and the porridge should be homogeneous in such a way that the binding will be made accurate and very, very good. After preparing the binder, then making the briquettes. After the binder and briquette charcoal were well mixed together, you can make briquettes. You need the briquettes press and a hammer or wooden mallet. Just as I mentioned earlier, that we need the carbonizer, the raw materials, and a hammer and the press. Now, figure 3 shows the briquette press, which is earlier shown in the PowerPoint, with the ejector resting in the bottom of the cup. Scoop up a full cup of briquettes charcoal powder. Place the plunger in the cup. Hit the piston hard with the hammer 3 to 5 times to compress the powder, which is as in figure 16. Then hit the bottom of the press on a hard surface, e.g. the surface of the hammering station. This pushes the ejector pin upwards and lifts the briquettes upwards. Then repeat until you have made more briquettes. You have made briquettes with all the material. That is, as I made mentioned earlier, when you have the cup, it has 2 plungers. One is as a piston, which is to be put in at the bottom of the press. One at the top, which you will use to hammer so that it will be compressed in such a way that it will form a particular shape. Now, as we can see in figure 16, these are the briquettes which are being pressed using the briquette press. These briquettes now formed will need to dry in sunshine to fully harden. Now, for the briquettes to dry, leave the briquettes to dry in the sun for at least 2 days. If rain is likely, make sure they are protected from water. Then after 2 days, the briquettes are ready for use. Now, these fully formed briquettes are now ready for use. They can be used in normal store or can be transported and sold in the market, depending on the purpose in which an individual is producing it. Now, since we were able to produce our briquettes, there are things we have to consider. We are working towards climate action, so we have to consider 3 benefits to the environment. The first one is environmental benefit, the second one, social benefit, the third, economic benefit. So we are taking a look at the environmental benefit. Now, using the agricultural biomass as a cooking fuel is as using renewable energies, which can contribute to sustainable forest management, because the charcoal we have been using, the wood fuel, is usually leading to deforestation, desert elopement, and soil erosion. Now, use of charcoal briquettes usually neutral CO2 emissions balance, low sulfur emissions, which usually causes acid rain. It has a forest origin under a proper management scheme. Therefore, it contributes to forest regeneration and prevention of forest fires. Because if we are producing charcoal, usually it has to be done in the forest. And actually, we are 99.9% prone to forest fires. It is sourced from agricultural waste. Therefore, it enables a residue with a second life. And one other thing, which is actually amazing, is about the ashes from these briquettes, which can be used as fertilizer. So you can even negotiate with the farmers that you will be producing it and you will be giving them the ashes, which they can use as a fertilizer. Is also a step forward towards a positive collaboration with the farmers also. Then the social benefits. Since we've taken a look at the environmental benefit, the positive environmental impact, let's take a look at the social benefits. Now, the first and foremost is create jobs throughout the supply chain, especially in rural areas, because they are the people living in agricultural, close to agricultural farmlands, and thus preventing rural migration to urban areas. Taking a look at these social benefits only, the first one, we'll be able to realize that it is working towards achieving not just climate action, not just provision of affordable and clean energy, but also working towards eradication of SDG issue number one, which is poverty, hunger, well-being, good health and well-being, and also climate action, protection of biodiversity, as much as other things. All these are the environmental impact. Now, if it has a forest origin, it will promote the sustainable management, improving the state of the forest. Under this point, we have two additional points, with direct incidents to the decreased risk of fire and the corresponding damages to human health and properties. As I made mention earlier, it hinders forest fires, with indirect incidents in possession of the forest as a source of jobs and wealth creation. Example, tourism, because forests can be used as a tourism environment for hiking and other activities. It also promotes confidence in renewable energy at local and rural levels. This is about the social benefits. Now, taking a look at the economic benefits. Positive life cycle economic balance costs lower than fossil fuel, because the charcoal briquettes is used from agricultural waste, and from the materials used, I can't be able to tell you clearly that the only thing you need or you might need to purchase in the market is the cassava created starch. The agricultural waste, usually they are waste that are useless. So definitely it has to be lower in cost than fossil fuels. And also, it decreases dependence on energy imports, thus favoring greater energy price stability by not depending on international market volatility. Because if we have charcoal briquettes produced within our communities, we will not be able to depend on liquefied petroleum gases as cooking fuels, kerosene, and others. We will be able to depend on ourselves and the waste materials we have. Therefore, our dependence to all energy imports will be actually minimized. And thirdly, locally added value, fostering local original businesses along the supply chain. Just as I made mentioned earlier, its economic benefits are clearly stated in point number 3. One, the forest operators, transportation and warehousing, briquette manufacturers, dealers, installers, maintenance, services providers, etc. In this case, it also promotes the eradication of poverty, hunger, providing good health, among other gender inequality, among other sustainable development goals. So actually, this proves it effective to produce charcoal briquettes instead of using other fuels for cooking. And the last but not the least, it enables the valorization of sub-products and even waste. In this case, since we are working towards climate action, and when people realize that these waste are useful, they will be able to maintain less waste, and actually they are going to forget about cutting trees in order to form charcoal, which is used as cooking fuel. Then requirements to start a briquette business. Since we are able to find out how to make briquettes, also we are able to get some of the impacts or the benefits, both environmental, social, and economic, then there is need to have an idea on if we are to start such a business, where do we start and where are we heading to? Now, the first and the most important thing to consider while starting a briquette business or a warehouse or a company for briquette production, the first thing to consider is site. That is the siting of your industry or the production site. Actually, the site for briquettes production should be within a community with agricultural land growing various cash crops within 5 kilometers of your production site. This is clearly saying that the best area for production sites when it comes to briquettes are rural areas, because they are areas where agricultural production is effective. And secondly, the equipment. The equipment needed are a carbonizer and a molding machine. Usually, if you are using a briquette press or an extruder. Now, if you are using a carbonizer, which is a kiln or oil drum carbonizers, they are fabricated at about $25 here in Nigeria, while the briquette press is about approximately $10. And if you are using an electric extruder, it is available in various countries at the rate of about $1,500. Then for small scale production, one needs about $500 to $1,000 to start production, depending on the nature of the production. While for a large scale production, one needs about $2,500 to $3,000 to start a mass production of briquettes. Then, in conclusion, we realize that household fuel is a major energy problem in the developing world, especially here in Africa. Cooking with biomass, which is free, is associated with childhood pneumonia, the leading cause of childhood deaths across the world. Wood charcoal, made traditionally, is a clean alternative but can be expensive, and also is associated with deforestation. And we are working towards managing and maintaining biodiversity. Therefore, the use of charcoal, I think the wood charcoal is actually dangerous. So therefore, since we have waste available, it is better and necessary that we use the waste instead of taking ourselves or leading the way to deforestation, because negative impacts will rain upon us. As a friend usually says, he says the number one enemy of the planet Earth are its inhabitants, and that's actually true. The BFPM technique allows clean burning charcoal to be made from previously unused agricultural waste, either for personal use or to sell at the market, providing environmental, social, and economic benefits. It allows poor farmers to make a profit from previously worthless crop waste. The technology is simple, cheap, and quick, and use locally available materials. We have outlined the process required to allow field workers to produce charcoal of their own. Uh, Conclusion. With the above briquettes produced, majority of the following goals are achieved. Actually, considering the economic and social benefits, SDG number 1, which is no to poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, also affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, uh, sustainable cities and communities, responsible production, consumption and production, uh, climate action, life on water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, partnerships for goals will definitely be achieved. So we are working on only climate action, or we say affordable and clean energy, but also due to the integration of the sustainable development goals, we are not just working on a single goal. We are actually working towards achieving almost all the sustainable development goals. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. That was wonderful. It was a really detailed presentation about the process, and I really learned a lot about what all the different steps are that go into briquette production. So thank you for sharing. I want to open up the floor to any questions from Paulo or Shivani.
Yes.
Questions or comments?
If there are any questions or comments, they are welcome.
If not, let's have some discussion. I have some discussion questions.
No questions?
My first question would be, how many places is this process currently being used? Like, is this a prototype, or do you have, like, is this process going on in your city? Is it in 10 cities or villages?
Actually, for now, we have a plan to take the project to about 12 to 13 cities. But currently, I think last week we are able to conclude with the first city, which is Funtua local government area of Katsina State. And as we are talking now, some of the participants have started providing the materials for themselves to start mass production of the briquettes, because we use the project since we know the type of community we are from. They don't usually appreciate things that they don't see clearly that there are benefits. So we use the project to spread the climate sign for them to pledge that they will actually work towards a sustainable environment. And we are working to make sure that we take this project to all the cities we outlined. And we are training some individuals to take the project nationwide so that the nook and crannies of Nigeria will know about the briquette charcoal, and that will hinder the production of the charcoal from the forest trees, preventing forest fires, providing adequate carbon sink, because the trees we have, they are the number one carbon sinks that usually consume the carbon dioxide we are producing from liquefied petroleum gases, and that will actually aid towards climate action.
Wow, that's wonderful. To not have to use wood fires for energy and cooking is incredible. So it's a huge step, the work you're doing. Let me think how I want to say this. What's the quantity of biomass consumed to the number of briquettes produced?
Actually, it depends on the type of biomass used. For example, if you are using 10 kilograms of maize cobs, I'm sure you are going to get about 7 to 8 kilograms of briquettes, depending on the carbonization process. Because as I made mention earlier, in briquette production, there is no substitute to experience, because if the carbonization process is well monitored, you can get high percentage of the carbonized material, about 80 to 85%. If the carbonization process is not well monitored, you might get about 5 to 7, 50 to 70% of the biomass being carbonized. So the carbonization process determines the yield.
Okay. Very interesting. So if someone were to hear your presentation and want to start production of a kiln or briquette for making briquettes in their community, what would you recommend as the first steps?
Actually, at the first step, the first and the most important thing to make available is the carbonizer. Usually, as you can see, I use an oil drum. Even though you can fabricate the carbonizer using various metal materials, but I think the use of the oil drum makes it easier. But for mass production, I think advanced methods of producing a carbonizer will be better so that it can take higher quantity of the agricultural waste. Because just as I made mention earlier, for the production of briquettes or for the carbonization, three conditions are required: the biomass, heat, and the biomass, heat, and anaerobic conditions. So the equipment and the raw materials are the most important things. Though I realize that the raw materials are not difficult to get, but make sure the first step you have to take in starting that is to make sure you have your equipment. If you are doing it at low scale production, you need the kiln or the oil drum carbonizer, you need the briquette press, and then a hammer. All other things you can improvise.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, I think what was one of the really neat parts about your presentation is you kind of lined up everything you need to replicate it. So that was really well done in that perspective, because anyone can now watch this recording and start figuring out how to do it in their community. So thank you for creating this model for everyone.
Thank you very much.
Did you see Paulo's question? Is all
Yes.
agricultural waste usable for this process? Like, does it have to be
Actually,
maize or can it be others?
it doesn't have to be maize only. You can use all agricultural waste because I use weeds from the farms. It makes a very good briquette. I use tree leaves, trunks that have been cut in from the trees. It is also good agricultural biomass, rice bagasse, sugarcane bagasse, rice husk, all can be used for briquettes production. Though there is one thing you have to be very vigilant about. The nature of the biomass has to be determined and observed because of the carbonization process. Because some of the agricultural biomass burn easily, but some take more time, just like the husk. It doesn't burn easily compared to the maize cob, the maize bagasse, the sugarcane bagasse, and other agricultural biomass. But all agricultural biomass can be used for briquettes production. I hope his question is answered.
Excellent, thank you. Shivani, did you have questions or comments? Your presentation was so thorough. It's it's hard to think of what else there is to ask. I think you really covered a lot of material and gave a very thorough explanation. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can we have the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, actually, you can. I think I forwarded the Google Drive folder to access the presentation, and I think it's okay if you share it with all our participants.
Great. I will send out via email.
Pardon?
So in the next, whenever I send out the next announcement email, I'll include it in there.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. If there are no further questions, then oh wait, let me see. Yes. Oh, yep, of course. One more question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Away.
Any question?
I think she's typing.
Okay.
I would like to know if it's possible to use only dry leaves for briquettes.
Actually, it is possible because there are people that have been using dry leaves, but actually, it is better to mix the dry leaves with other agricultural waste to make the best briquettes. But using dry leaves is okay. You can use dry leaves to produce briquettes. Why I said you should mix it with other agricultural biomass because of the carbonization process. If one is not monitoring it well, the, the, the leaves will be burnt completely to ashes, and thereby you will have actually low yield of the briquettes. So if one is to monitor the carbonization process very well, it is recommended that you use leaves for briquettes production, since it also is a source of carbon, and all biomass that can provide carbon can be used for briquettes production.
Thank
I hope
you.
the question is answered.
Yeah, I think that was a really good question because I was starting to think that, well, this process could really only take place after the harvest because that's when you have all that excessive agricultural waste laying in the fields as you wait, to plant again. But to be able to use dry leaves as well gives you an option to produce during
Yes,
a further times of the year. It kind of extends the production time.
of course. Though here in Africa, usually, we have irrigation farmers,
Mm-hmm.
and during that period, usually is during dry season. They also plant maize, they harvest maize, rice, among other agricultural products, vegetables, and all this also have waste that can be used for briquettes. Um, Sugarcane bagasse can also be used for briquettes production. So we can clearly say that briquettes production is a process that can be done almost throughout the year as far as irrigation farming is in place.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well done. It was very interesting.
Thank you, Beatrice. I'm grateful.
Well, thank you. If there are no further questions, then I think we'll finish up the call. Thank you so much to Mohammed from Breakthrough Plastics Nigeria, for sharing this wonderful information and for creating a really great model of a sustainable energy source that is accessible to pretty much anyone, any community for very low cost. I'll be sending out information soon with the next webinar dates. I think the 25th, we're going to have our first webinar for our mini series that's just going to be starting on economy. So be on the lookout for that email. And then I'm still looking for someone to present on the 30th of this month. So those of you who have not presented, let me know if you are interested, and I can help you develop a topic and you're planning for developing your presentation. All right.
All right.
So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.